Now on BBC One, the news with Fiona Bruce.
A British Airways flight to Washington is grounded after a government security alert. It's the same flight that was boarded by American FBI agents yesterday. 8 Britons are killed when their minibus crashes in South Africa. And a miracle from the rubble. A man is pulled out alive from the Iran earthquake. Good evening. A British Airways flight from London to Washington has been grounded on the advice of the government. The plane should have left Heathrow this afternoon, but it was cancelled at short notice for security reasons. Last night, the same flight, BA223, was held on the tarmac after arriving in Washington, while FBI agents acting on intelligence reports questioned some of the passengers. Anita McVeigh reports.
Another security alert for the airline industry. Nearly 200 passengers due to travel on the British Airways Boeing 747 to Washington this afternoon were told at check-in that Flight 223 wouldn't be taking off. This is the same flight number as the plane detained by the FBI at Dulles Airport in Washington yesterday. The Department of Transport won't say if that's significant, nor would a spokeswoman comment on the reasons for the cancellation of today's service. So what's the view of experts in aviation security?
The authorities do not cancel a flight for little or no reason. There must have been a very specific threat against this aircraft.
Just last week, 6 Air France flights between Paris and Los Angeles were cancelled when the French authorities were told by their American counterparts of a potential terrorist threat. Today's developments add to the growing fears about terrorism, particularly on transatlantic routes. Anita McVeigh, BBC News.
Our correspondent Justin Webb is in Washington. Justin, are you getting any more information from there as to why this flight was grounded?
What we're hearing about, starting with yesterday's flight, is that there was a specific problem with the passenger manifest, the list of passengers. It wasn't received in America apparently until the flight was in the air. There were problems with a name or some names on that manifest. That's why they escorted the flight and met the passengers and questioned them. We're not being told anything so specific about today's flight, but it does look as if this is rather more than simply names on a passenger manifest. There does seem to be, as we've been hearing in that report, the possibility at least that there is some specific threat to this flight number and that is why they have acted. Possibly from a superabundance of caution. People here are making it plain that they are willing to be cautious, even though it upsets people and causes people difficulties. But also at the same time, I think the general feeling on this side of the Atlantic as well is that there has to be something really serious for this to have happened.
Well, and Justin, it's not the only security alert there have been in recent days over flights to the United States.
No, it isn't. And I think it is part of a general pattern. The American authorities are willing now to be aggressive, to be proactive, even if it does cause people distress, even if it does mean that people's journeys are extended. If they can do everything and be sure that they are doing absolutely everything they can to make their skies safe. I think this is part of a general policy. We could see this again and again in the skies over America in the days, weeks, years to come.
Okay, Justin, thanks very much. 8 British tourists have been killed in a bus crash in South Africa. 6 died at the scene when their minibus overturned on a road near the Royal Natal National Park. 2 died later in hospital. They were travelling from the town of Bergville to their lodge at Harrismith. The survivors are being looked after in nearby Ladysmith, and Fergal Keane is there. Fergal.
Even by the notorious standards of South Africa's roads, this was an extraordinary, a bizarre tragedy. And senior policemen here, men who are used to dealing with mayhem on the roads, have told me they're deeply shocked. On the road near Bergville, the marks of a frantic attempt to avoid disaster. The driver of the minibus swerving to avoid the pedestrian who'd stepped out into his way. It was a hopeless attempt. The minibus spun out of control and off the road with devastating consequences. Given the force of the crash, it seems extraordinary that any of the tourists emerged from the vehicle alive. Yet there were 5 survivors, among them 3 Britons who were treated for minor injuries. Scattered around the area, some of the belongings of those who'd been enjoying a holiday in one of South Africa's most beautiful regions. The police investigation is being led from this small rural station. The local commander told me tonight the pedestrian who caused the crash had a history of mental illness.
He was previously been at the hospital, and then he was discharged, and then he was given back to the family. So I would think that maybe the illness has started afresh.
Among the first to arrive from Britain to offer help to the survivors was the director of the touring company they'd been travelling with. You've just come from meeting with the survivors here in this hotel. How are they?
They're obviously still very shocked and upset, although I believe they are coping with it as well as can be expected. Now that the formalities are through, our priority is firstly to take them to get them better care, but also for the relatives of the deceased to help them to travel down to South Africa should they wish.
Among the victims were Roger Pearce and his wife Linda. They'd gone to South Africa to celebrate his 60th birthday. His brother, surrounded by his daughters, paid this tribute.
It is tragic that it has ended in this way. He's left 3 daughters and their grandpa absolutely distressed and distraught by something that has happened so suddenly.
This is a portrait of grief shared by all of the families who lost loved ones in this tragedy. Now, the survivors who are staying in this hotel right behind me here have just issued a statement, and it's brief. They say they're shocked, but also they want to point out that they don't blame the driver of the minibus in any way for what's happened, and that's a view shared by pretty well everybody here.
Fergal, thanks very much. A man has been found alive in the rubble of the Iranian earthquake, 6 days after the city of Bam was reduced to rubble. The 27-year-old man had been trapped under a wardrobe. A memorial service was held in the city today to remember the dead, believed to be more than 30,000. Nick Bryant sent this report from Bam.
In street after street, the destruction is almost total. The chances of pulling survivors from the rubble almost nil. So this is the miraculous made real. Yadullah Satman was discovered in the wreckage of his home around midnight last night, almost 72 hours after hopes had dimmed of finding anyone alive. Rescuers found him lying alongside 6 corpses and presumed that he too was dead. But then they realized he was blinking and trying to speak. He was buried under a wardrobe, which protected him from falling debris. His only injury, a broken hip. Yadullah's wife, Fatame, had long given up hope of seeing him alive. But others mourn on this, the 7th night of grieving. When Muslim ceremonies of remembrance traditionally take place. For bereaved relatives, emotion impossible to contain. For relief workers, exhaustion and despair. Some women concealed their faces, but their feelings were laid bare. The sorrow here spans the generations. Despite today's extraordinary rescue, the emphasis here is on humanitarian relief, helped by the opening this afternoon of an American field hospital. Over 60 patients have been treated already. More arrive by the hour. Watched by soldiers from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, here to provide security, not that it's needed.
Thank you so much.
Okay, you are welcome. With the relaxation of US sanctions, there may well be a political dimension to this tragedy.
Thank you very much.
Certainly some of the harsh rhetoric of America's war on terrorism has been softened. A 25-year-old standoff between Tehran and Washington has temporarily given way to the diplomacy of need. Nick Bryant, BBC News, Bam.
A nightclub doorman has appeared in court charged with the murder of PC Ian Broadhurst on Boxing Day. David Bieber, who's also known as Nathan Coleman, was also charged with the attempted murder of 2 other officers.
There was a high security presence at Leeds Magistrates Court for the hearing. Armed police patrolled outside, whilst inside police officers and security staff flanked the defendant in the dock. His name was given as David Francis Bieber, also known as Nathan Wayne Coleman. He appeared in court today, clean-shaven and with ginger hair. He spoke with an American accent to confirm his name and date of birth. David Bieber was charged with the murder of PC Ian Broadhurst and the attempted murders of 2 other police officers. The shooting happened on Boxing Day whilst PC Broadhurst was out on patrol in the Oakwood area of Leeds. A 6-day manhunt ensued and police released this photograph of Nathan Coleman to the media. He was seen in Bradford and in the nearby town of Brighouse and was arrested in the early hours of New Year's Eve in Gateshead. He was brought to Leeds yesterday to be questioned by detectives before being charged with the offences late last night. Today's hearing lasted under half an hour.
David Bieber left court to spend the next week in custody. He'll reappear in front of Leeds Crown Court on the 8th of January, charged with the murder of PC Ian Broadhurst and the attempted murders of PC's Neil Roper and James Banks. Judith Moritz, BBC News, Leeds.
New research suggests that the north-south divide in house prices narrowed last year. Figures from the Halifax, Britain's biggest mortgage lender, show that the 30 towns with the largest price rises were all outside the south of England.
As the UK's top property hotspot, it's little wonder developments like this one are selling fast. House prices here in Brighouse, West Yorkshire, rose at a whopping 65% in 2003. So what's its secret?
One of the things is the people. They're so friendly here. I found they're really friendly. And just good links to everywhere, Leeds, Bradford, everywhere, so close by, and communication's great.
I'm quite shocked that they have gone up so much, but I say it's a nice place to live.
It's good for sellers, but not good for buyers.
Yeah,
if you're looking to buy, it's...
If you're young, you're going to struggle.
Overall, it's been another year of soaring house prices. Homeowners in the northeast and Cumbria have seen the biggest rises, up 33%. That's more than twice the national average of 15%. But in London, there was a rise of just 8%, narrowing the gap in property prices between the north and south. As for 2004, well, more modest growth is being predicted. And for some, especially here in London, there's a real threat that the value of their property could fall. This is just one of several London boroughs which experts say are at risk. Investing in housing, which for so long has seemed like such a safe bet, could be about to become a lot more complicated. John Moynan, BBC News in West London.
That's it for now. There are news updates throughout the night over on BBC News 24. But from us, good night.
Good evening to you. I think at least the weather's going to behave itself for the next couple of days. That is, after all the chaos and mayhem that we had last night. As you're well aware, numerous events were cancelled and 30 centimetres of snow in places. The winds up to 120 miles an hour. Now, we've also seen the back of 2003, and actually, as far as England and Wales is concerned, that was a record year, and we won't forget the 100 degrees Fahrenheit that we had on August the 10th. Here's all the rain and sleet and snow as it swept down across the country during the night. It left behind a legacy of scattered showers. Those too now have begun to fade, but the cloud is gathering out there to the west. Now, along these eastern counties, there continue to be some outbreaks of rain, maybe a little bit of sleetiness mixed in as well. Skies clearing, the cloud clearing in the more central and western areas. That means to say the temperatures tumbling to around freezing, so watch out for some icy patches on those untreated roads. Now, that weather front's going to move back westwards during the latter part of tonight and into tomorrow, and at the same time it'll be introducing colder winds coming in from the continent. The front all the while, though, will be getting weaker, but it's still going to have some cloud in those eastern parts to begin with tomorrow. Little bits of rain here and there, maybe some sleet too. That will move westwards during the course of the day, dying out at the same time. Brighter weather filtering into many of those eastern areas. At the same time, across Ireland and western Scotland, the cloud will be thickening up. And before the day's out, the next outbreaks of rain will be moving in from the west. It is, though, going to be a chilly day, I think, just about everywhere, 3 or 4 degrees at best. Outbreaks of rain, I think, in many northern and western areas from time to time through the weekend, bright and cold in the southeastern corner.